The Lagos harmattan was unforgiving that December morning. Dust hung in the air like a veil of regret, and Somto stood on his apartment balcony in Yoba, watching the city wake up beneath a hazy sun. Christmas decorations already littered the streets below. Plastic Santa Clauses that looked out of place against the corrugated iron roofs, colorful bulbs strung between buildings, and the ever-present sound of holiday jingles blaring from nearby shops. December always did this to him. While everyone else felt the magic of the season, Somto felt only the crushing weight of memory. 5 years. It had been 5 years since he destroyed the best thing that ever happened to him. His phone buzzed on the plastic chair beside him. Another group chat message from his cousins planning the family Christmas gathering in Enugu. He swiped it away without reading. How could he celebrate anything when his heart still carried the stain of what he'd done? Somto walked back into his one-bedroom apartment. The walls were bare except for a faded Arsenal FC poster and a wooden crucifix his mother had insisted he hang up. He'd lived here for 3 years now, ever since the promotion at the telecommunications company where he worked. It was a decent place, but it felt empty. Everything felt empty. He opened his laptop and tried to focus on the report due before the holiday break, but his mind wandered as it always did in December. Back to her. Back to Gloria. Gloria Mensah. Even her name still made his chest tighten. They'd met at the University of Lagos during their final year. She was studying mass communication. He was in computer science. Their love story had been the kind that made their friends jealous, the kind where two people just fit together like pieces of a puzzle designed specifically for them. She was patient where he was impulsive. Gentle where he was rough around the edges. She saw the good in him even when he couldn't see it himself, growing up as the forgotten middle child in a family where academic achievement was the only currency that mattered. But Somto had been broken then, though he didn't know it. Broken by years of feeling inadequate, of watching his older brother excel while his younger sister charmed everyone effortlessly. Broken by a father who measured love in grades and achievements. Broken by the internalized belief that he wasn't worthy of good things. So when Gloria loved him, purely, completely, unconditionally, Somto didn't know how to receive it. Instead, he sabotaged it. Piece by piece. Argument by argument. He picked fights over nothing. He accused her of flirting when she was simply being friendly. He withdrew when she needed him most, punishing her with silence for imagined slights. He made her feel small because he felt small, and misery loved company. The end came on a December evening, right before Christmas. They were supposed to attend a friend's wedding together in Lekki. She'd bought a new dress, a beautiful emerald green ochre style that made her dark skin glow. But Somto had started an argument that morning about something trivial, something he couldn't even remember now. By evening, the argument had escalated. He said things he didn't mean, called her names that made her flinch, accused her of caring more about appearances than about him. She'd stood there in that green dress, tears streaming down her face, and said the words that still echoed in his head 5 years later. I can't do this anymore, Somto. I've loved you through everything, but I can't love you more than you love yourself. I can't keep drowning while trying to save you. She left that night. Blocked his number. Blocked him on social media. Disappeared from his life as completely as if she'd never existed, except she had existed, and the hole she left behind was enormous. Somto had spent the first year in denial, telling himself she'd overreacted. The second year in anger, blaming her for giving up on him. By the third year, the truth began to seep in like floodwater under a door. By the fourth year, he was drowning in guilt. And now, in this 5th December, he was just tired. Tired of hating himself. Tired of the what-ifs that plagued him at night. Tired of seeing her ghost in every December celebration. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his friend Kenneth. Guy, you coming for Segan's birthday tonight? No dulling this time, oh. Somto sighed. He'd been avoiding social gatherings, but maybe staying home would only make things worse. He typed back. Maybe. Let me see. He closed his laptop and lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling fan rotating slowly overhead. The harmattan wind rattled his windows, and somewhere in the compound, a child was singing Jingle Bells off-key. Somto closed his eyes and did what he always did in December. He prayed for Gloria's happiness, wherever she was. It was the only prayer he still believed in, the only one that felt honest. He didn't pray for himself anymore. He'd long ago decided he didn't deserve redemption. But perhaps that was about to change. Oh wow. 5 years of guilt and regret. Can Somto ever truly move forward from what he did to Gloria? If this story is hitting different, smash that like button and subscribe to Folktales by Inaya. Drop a comment. Have you ever regretted pushing someone away? What happens when Somto stumbles across something unexpected online is shocking. Share this video. Turn on notifications. Segan's birthday party was exactly what Somto expected. Too loud, too crowded, and filled with people trying too hard to have fun. The venue was a rooftop bar in Victoria Island, one of those trendy spots where young professionals gathered to convince themselves they'd made it. String lights crisscrossed overhead, and Afrobeats pounded from speakers that seemed designed to make conversation impossible. Somto nursed a bottle of Star Lager and tried to look interested as Kenneth told an animated story about a client meeting gone wrong. Around them, people laughed, danced, and took selfies against the Lagos skyline backdrop. December in the city always felt like this, a desperate rush to squeeze joy from the year's final days. "You're doing that thing again," Kenneth said, interrupting his own story. "What thing?" "That thing where you're physically here but mentally somewhere in 2019. Kenneth was one of the few people who knew the full story about Gloria. "Bro, you need to let it go." "I'm fine," Somto lied, taking a long drink from his bottle. "You're not fine. You haven't been fine for 5 years. Kenneth's voice softened. "Look, I know you messed up. But you can't carry this forever. It's destroying you." Before Somto could respond, their friend Clara bounced over, phone in hand. "Guys, you have to see this. Remember Gloria? Gloria Mensah? She's trending on Twitter." Somto's bottle nearly slipped from his hand. "What?" Clara shoved her phone toward them, and there it was, a photo of Gloria standing in what looked like a modern office space in Accra, holding an award. The caption read, "Gloria Mensah wins Ghana's Young Entrepreneur of the Year for her innovative mental health app, Mindspace Africa. From tragedy to triumph. Her story will inspire you." Somto's hands trembled as he took Clara's phone, zooming in on the image. Gloria looked different but the same. Her hair was shorter now, styled in a natural cut that framed her face beautifully. She'd always been lovely, but this Gloria radiated something more. Confidence, peace, wholeness. She was wearing a navy blue dress and holding a glass trophy, her smile bright and genuine. But it was the word tragedy that caught in Somto's throat like a fishbone. "Scroll down," Clara urged. "The full article is there." With shaking fingers, Somto scrolled through the Twitter thread that linked to a feature article in a Ghanaian business magazine. His eyes scanned desperately. After battling severe depression and anxiety following a traumatic relationship in her mid-20s, Mensah attempted suicide in December 2019. The world tilted. Survived the attempt and spent 3 months in psychiatric care, where she realized the lack of accessible mental health resources in West Africa. December 2019. That was the December she'd left him. Less than a month after she'd walked out in that green dress. "I was in the darkest place I'd ever been," Mensah told our reporter. "But that darkness showed me my purpose. I realized that if I was struggling this much, thousands of others were too, suffering in silence because of stigma and lack of access to care." Somto handed the phone back to Clara, his own hands suddenly not working properly. The noise of the party faded to a dull roar in his ears. "Are you okay?" Kenneth asked, gripping his shoulder. Somto couldn't speak. His mind was reeling, trying to process what he'd just read. Gloria had tried to take her own life. Because of him. Because of what he'd done to her. "I need air," he managed to say, pushing through the crowd toward the rooftop's edge. Kenneth followed him, giving him space but staying close. Somto gripped the railing and stared out at Lagos sprawling below, a constellation of lights blinking in the darkness. Christmas decorations twinkled from buildings and homes, marking the season of joy. But all Somto felt was horror. "It was my fault," he whispered. "Kenneth, it was my fault. You don't know that. I pushed her to that place." Somto's voice cracked. "Everything she went through, the depression, the darkness, I did that to her. Bro, you can't take on. I called her worthless, Kenneth. I made her feel like she was the problem when I was the one who was broken. And she almost..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Kenneth was quiet for a moment, then said gently, "But she survived. She's not just surviving, she's thriving. Look at what she built from that pain." Somto shook his head, tears burning his eyes. "That doesn't make what I did okay." "No, it doesn't," Kenneth agreed. "But it means she's stronger than what you put her through. She didn't let it destroy her." They stood in silence, the party continuing behind them. Somto pulled out his own phone with trembling hands and searched for Gloria's social media. Her Instagram was no longer private. He scrolled through images of her life over the past 5 years. Photos of her team at Mindspace Africa, speaking engagements, pictures with what looked like her family, screenshots of testimonials from people her app had helped. One post from 3 weeks ago caught his attention. It was a photo of Gloria sitting on a beach at sunset, and the caption read, "5 years ago, I didn't think I'd see another Christmas. Today, I'm celebrating life, healing, and the journey of becoming whole. To everyone fighting battles no one can see, you are not alone. You are not your worst moments. You deserve to heal. #mental health matters, #survivor not victim." The comments were filled with heart emojis and words of encouragement. People shared their own stories of survival. Gloria had built something beautiful from her pain, a community, a purpose, a legacy. And Somto had been the catalyst for that pain. He clicked on her profile picture, enlarging it. She was standing in front of the Mindspace Africa office, arms crossed, looking directly at the camera with clear, bright eyes. She looked happy, healed. And for the first time in 5 years, instead of drowning in his own guilt, Somto felt something else, relief. She had survived. She had healed. The worst thing he'd ever done to another person hadn't destroyed her. She had transformed it into something meaningful. He took a deep breath of the harmattan dry air and looked at Kenneth. "I need to tell her I'm sorry. Are you sure that's a good idea? It's been 5 years, man. Maybe it's better to just..." "I've been carrying this for 5 years, Somto interrupted. "And she's been carrying what I did to her for even longer. I need to apologize. Not for me, but for her. She deserves to hear it." Kenneth studied his face in the dim light. "Okay. But think carefully about what you're going to say. This isn't about making yourself feel better." "I know," Somto said quietly. "This is about giving her the apology she never got." That night, Somto left the party early. He walked the streets of Victoria Island for hours, composing and recomposing the message in his head. By the time he finally made it back to his apartment in Yoba, the sun was beginning to rise over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. He sat at his small dining table, opened his laptop, and began to type. Somto stared at the blank Facebook message screen for 20 minutes before typing the first word. He'd found Gloria's public page, Mindspace Africa, and the message option was active. His cursor blinked accusingly in the empty text box, waiting for him to find words adequate for 5 years of regret. How do you apologize for breaking someone so badly they wanted to stop existing? The morning sun streamed through his window, and Lagos was already awake. Car horns honking, street vendors calling out their wares, generators rumbling to life. But inside his apartment, there was only silence and the weight of what he needed to say. He started typing. Deleted it. Started again. Deleted it again. Finally, he decided to stop overthinking and just let the truth pour out. Gloria. I don't know if you'll read this. I don't even know if I have the right to send it. But I saw your interview, and I need you to know something. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry for everything I put you through. For the names I called you. For making you feel small when you only ever tried to love me. For taking my own pain and insecurity and turning it into weapons against you. For every time I chose my ego over your heart. I didn't know about what happened after you left. I didn't know until tonight. And Gloria, when I read that you'd been in such a dark place that I can't even write the words. The guilt nearly crushed me on that rooftop. But then I kept reading. I saw what you built. I saw the lives you're touching. I saw that beautiful smile in your pictures, and I realized something. You survived. Not because of me, but despite me. You took the worst pain and transformed it into purpose. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness, though God knows I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm not even asking for a response. I'm writing because you deserved this apology 5 years ago, and you deserve it now. You deserved better than who I was. You deserved a man who cherished your love instead of abusing it. You deserved someone whole enough to receive what you were offering. I wasn't that man. I was broken, and I broke you in the process. I've spent 5 years hating myself for what I did to you. Every December, when the world gets festive, I remember that December evening in your green dress when you finally had enough. I remember the look in your eyes. I remember failing you. But seeing you now, successful, glowing, helping others heal from the same darkness you walk through, I finally feel something other than guilt. I feel grateful that you're alive. I feel proud of what you've accomplished, even though I have no right to feel proud. Mostly, I feel relieved that you didn't let what I did define your story. You are remarkable, Gloria. You always were, even when I was too blind and broken to see it. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that when it mattered. I'm sorry I made you doubt yourself when you should have been doubting me. I hope you're surrounded by people who treat you with the love and respect you deserve. I hope you've found peace. I hope you know that what happened between us was never about your worth. It was always about my inability to recognize my own. Thank you for trying to love me even when I made it impossible. Thank you for walking away when you needed to. Thank you for choosing to live when the pain got too heavy. I'm working on forgiving myself, but that's my journey, not your responsibility. I wish you every beautiful thing this life has to offer. Take care of yourself. Somto. He read it over 3 times, tears blurring his vision. Then, before he could overthink it again, he hit send. The message showed as delivered, but not seen. Somto closed his laptop and sat in the growing heat of the December morning, feeling simultaneously lighter and heavier. Lighter because he'd finally said what needed to be said. Heavier because now came the waiting, not for a response necessarily, but for whatever came next in his own healing journey. His phone rang. It was his mother calling from Enugu. Somto, my son. How are you? When are you coming home for Christmas? Your father is asking. Mama, I'll be there next week. Good, good. And Somto. Her voice dropped to that particular tone mothers use when they're about to say something they've been holding back. Are you okay? You sound different these past few years. Somto smiled despite himself. Mothers always knew. I'm working on it, Mama. I'm working on being okay. That's all any of us can do, my son. Keep working on it. After the call, Somto made himself breakfast, yam and fried eggs, and tried to focus on normal things. He cleaned his apartment. He responded to work emails. He even called Kenneth to confirm he was fine. But every few minutes, he found himself checking his laptop, looking for that seen notification. It came 3 days later. Somto had just gotten home from work, tired from a long day of troubleshooting network issues for frustrated customers. He dropped his bag, kicked off his shoes, and opened his laptop to check the football scores. That's when he saw it. Gloria Mensa has seen your message. His heart hammered against his ribs. He stared at the notification, afraid to check if she'd responded. Minutes passed. Then an hour. He made dinner, rice and stew, and barely tasted it. He took a shower, changed into shorts and a t-shirt, and finally, when he couldn't take the suspense anymore, he clicked on the message thread. There, beneath his long apology, was a single line. I forgave you years ago, Somto. I hope you forgive yourself too. Somto read it once. Then again. Then a third time. I forgave you years ago. She had forgiven him. Not today, not because of his message, but years ago. Long before he'd apologized. Long before he'd even begun to understand the depth of what he'd done. She'd forgiven him and moved on while he'd been stuck in a prison of his own making, punishing himself with guilt that she'd already released. Somto put his face in his hands and wept. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release. For 5 years, he'd carried the weight of unforgiveness that wasn't even there. He'd built an entire identity around being unforgivable when the person he'd hurt most had already let it go. I hope you forgive yourself too. Those 6 words broke something open in his chest. Because that was the work he'd never done. He'd sought forgiveness from God, from the universe, from everyone except the one person whose forgiveness actually mattered in his healing. Himself. Gloria had done her work. She'd faced her darkness, healed from her wounds, and built something beautiful from the ashes. She'd forgiven him and moved forward. Now it was his turn. Somto typed back, his fingers steady this time. Thank you. That means more than you know. I'm happy you're well. I'm happy you're helping others heal. You're doing exactly what you were meant to do. I'm going to work on forgiving myself. It's the least I can do to honor the second chance at life you chose. Be well, Gloria. She replied almost immediately. You too, Somto. Healing isn't linear, but it's worth it. I'm rooting for you. And then, just like that, the conversation was over. No drama, no lengthy back and forth, no rekindling of what once was. Just 2 people who had hurt each other, both doing the work to heal, both choosing to move forward. Somto closed his laptop and walked out to his balcony. The December air was still dusty with harmattan, but somehow it felt cleaner than before. Christmas lights blinked across the neighborhood, and somewhere in the distance, someone was playing Silent Night on a guitar. For the first time in 5 years, Somto didn't feel heavy. He still had work to do. Forgiveness was one thing. Actually doing the internal work to become a better man was another. But now he had something he didn't have before. Permission to start. Permission from the person whose opinion had mattered most. Permission to finally let go. That night, Somto slept better than he had in years. Christmas in Enugu was exactly as Somto remembered. Loud, chaotic, and full of love. His mother's compound was packed with relatives from near and far, children running between adults' legs, the smell of jollof rice and pepper soup filling the air, and gospel music blasting from speakers someone had set up under the mango tree. But this Christmas felt different to Somto. He was present in a way he hadn't been in years. Look at you, smiling like a person who has finally found sense, his younger sister Rebecca said, bumping his shoulder as they sat on the veranda watching their cousins play football in the compound. Is that your way of saying I look better? That's my way of saying you look alive again. What happened? Somto considered how to answer. How do you explain to someone that you'd been carrying death in your spirit and only just learned to put it down? I made peace with some things, he said finally. Rebecca studied him with the shrewd eyes that had always seen through his defenses. She was a lawyer now, working at a firm in Abuja, and she had a way of getting to truth like a surgeon getting to a wound. Does this piece have anything to do with Gloria? Somto's surprise must have shown on his face because Rebecca laughed. Please, we all knew about Gloria. Mama knew. Papa knew. We all watched you walk around like a ghost for 5 years. I'm just glad you finally seem to be rejoining the land of the living. It's complicated, Somto said. Love always is. But you know what's not complicated? The fact that you're here, actually laughing at Uncle Christopher's terrible jokes. Actually eating Mama's food like you can taste it. Whatever you made peace with, I'm happy for you. Later that evening, after the main festivities died down and people had retreated to various rooms to sleep off their food comas, Somto found his father sitting alone in the parlor, watching the news on low volume. His father, Chief Okonkwo, was a retired civil servant who had spent his entire career building a reputation for excellence. He was a hard man, not cruel but exacting. The kind of father who believed that discipline and achievement were the highest forms of love. "Papa," Somto said, taking a seat on the worn sofa beside him. His father looked at him, surprise flickering across his weathered face. Somto couldn't remember the last time he'd voluntarily sat down for a conversation with his father. "Somto, the party not sweet enough for you?" "The party is fine. I wanted to talk to you." Chief Okonkwo muted the television and turned to face his son fully. "Okay. Talk." Somto took a breath. This was harder than writing that message to Gloria. "Papa, do you remember when I was in secondary school and I came third in my class instead of first?" His father's brow furrowed. "What kind of question is that? That was many years ago. Do you remember what you said to me?" A pause. Then, quietly, "I said many things to you over the years. You said, third place is just first loser. If you can't be the best, what's the point?" His father's face shifted, something like regret passing across it. "Somto, I'm not bringing it up to make you feel bad, Papa. I'm bringing it up because I need you to know how much those words shaped me. How much they broke something in me. I was trying to motivate you. I know. But what it did was teach me that I wasn't enough. That love was conditional. That I had to earn my worth through achievement." Somto's voice remained steady. "And when I became a man, I took that brokenness and I hurt someone I loved. I hurt her badly, Papa. Because I didn't know how to believe I deserved good things." Chief Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. Outside, they could hear someone starting up a generator and the sound of Rebecca laughing at something. Finally, his father spoke. "My own father was harder on me than I ever was on you. He used cane where I used words. I thought I was being better. But maybe." He trailed off, then started again. "Maybe I was just inflicting a different kind of wound. I need to forgive you, Papa. And I need you to hear that I'm working on forgiving myself for what I did with the pain you gave me." His father looked at him with eyes that suddenly seemed older, more human. "Your mother told me something was different about you this visit. Now I see it. You've grown. I'm trying to." They sat in silence, the weight of years of misunderstanding hanging between them but somehow feeling lighter than before. "I'm proud of you," Chief Okonkwo said suddenly. "I don't say it enough. I don't know how to say these things. But I'm proud of the man you're becoming. Not because of your job or your achievements, but because you're doing the work I never did, looking inside, making things right." Somto felt tears prick his eyes. "Thank you, Papa." His father nodded and turned the television back on, but he reached over and gripped Somto's shoulder firmly before settling back into his chair. It was as close to a hug as Chief Okonkwo knew how to give. The rest of the Christmas holiday passed in a blur of family meals, church services, and long conversations. Somto found himself opening up to his siblings in ways he never had before. He told them about Gloria. Not all the details, but enough for them to understand why he'd been so withdrawn. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks exploded over Enugu and the family counted down to midnight, Somto made a silent resolution. Not the usual kind about weight loss or career goals, but something deeper. "This year, I choose healing over guilt. This year, I choose growth over self-punishment. This year, I learn to love myself the way I should have loved her." When he returned to Lagos in early January, Somto did something he'd been avoiding for years. He found a therapist. Dr. Amaran Wosu had her practice in Lekki, and her office was a calm oasis of plants and soft lighting. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach that Somto appreciated. "Tell me why you're here," she said in their first session. I hurt someone I loved. She forgave me. Now I need to learn how to forgive myself. That's a good start, Dr. Amara said. But I suspect there's more to the story. Why don't we begin at the beginning? And so Somto did. Week after week, he unpacked his childhood, his relationship with his father, his deep-seated belief that he wasn't worthy of love. He talked about Gloria, not just what he'd done to her, but what she'd represented. She had been a mirror showing him his own capacity for goodness, and he'd smashed that mirror because he couldn't stand what it reflected. Hurt people, Dr. Amara told him during one session. Understanding this doesn't excuse what you did, but it helps you see the pattern. Your father made you feel worthless, so you made Gloria feel worthless. Now you're choosing to break that cycle. How do I do that? Somto asked. By doing exactly what you're doing. By showing up here every week and doing the hard work. By being honest with yourself about your wounds and where they came from. By learning to treat yourself with the compassion your younger self never received. It wasn't easy. Some days, Somto left Dr. Amara's office feeling raw and exposed, like all his nerve endings were on fire. But other days, he left feeling lighter, like someone had reached into his chest and untangled a knot he didn't even know was there. He started journaling. He started exercising, early morning runs along the Yoba streets that helped him process his thoughts. He started being more present with his friends instead of just going through the motions. And slowly, gradually, Somto began to notice something remarkable. He was becoming someone he actually liked. Not the perfect person who never made mistakes. Not the person who erased his past. But someone who acknowledged his brokenness, did the work to heal it, and chose to be better every single day. One evening in February, as he sat on his balcony watching another Lagos sunset, Somto realized he'd gone an entire week without thinking about Gloria. It wasn't that he'd forgotten her or what he'd done. But she was no longer the center of his story. His healing was no longer dependent on her forgiveness. He had that already. His healing was now about the relationship he was building with himself. He pulled out his phone and opened his notes app, writing, I am more than my worst mistake. I am worthy of love, starting with my own. I choose to be gentle with the person I'm becoming. It felt like truth. It was a sticky August evening in Lagos when Somto's phone buzzed with a notification he never expected to see. Gloria Mensah has sent you a message. His hand froze over the chicken and rice he'd been eating. 8 months had passed since their brief exchange in December. 8 months of therapy, growth, and slowly rebuilding himself from the inside out. He'd assumed their story was complete, a neat ending where both parties moved on with their lives. Apparently, Gloria had other plans. He wiped his hands on a napkin and opened the message. Hi Somto. I hope this doesn't feel strange. I've been thinking about reaching out for a while now, and I finally worked up the courage. Mindspace Africa is expanding to Nigeria, and we're launching in Lagos next month. We're hosting a panel discussion on relationship trauma and mental health, specifically looking at how we harm the people we love when we haven't healed our own wounds. I'd like you to be on that panel. Before you say no, because I know that's probably your first instinct, hear me out. Your story, our story, could help people. Not the details necessarily, but the journey. What it looks like when someone recognizes their harm, takes accountability, and does the actual work to change. We need more men willing to talk about this openly. We need young men to see that healing is possible, that seeking help isn't weakness, that you can break cycles instead of perpetuating them. I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm asking you to do it for the next version of you who might not hurt the next version of me. Think about it. The panel is September 15th. Let me know. Gloria. Somto read the message 3 times, his food forgotten. His first instinct was indeed to say no. The thought of sitting on a stage, publicly acknowledging what he'd done, facing Gloria in person for the first time in 6 years, it all felt overwhelming. But then he thought about the young men in his family, his younger cousins, his future nephews. He thought about all the boys growing up in households like his, learning toxic patterns about masculinity and worth. He thought about the men in Dr. Amara's waiting room who looked ashamed to even be there. He thought about who he'd been and who he was becoming. The next day, he brought it up in therapy. "She wants you to share your story publicly," Dr. Amara said, leaning back in her chair. "How does that make you feel?" "Terrified. Exposed. Like everyone will see me as a monster." "And what's the other feeling?" "The one underneath the fear." Somto thought about it. Like this might be the final step. Like this is how I actually make meaning from what I did. Dr. Amara nodded. Accountability isn't just about apologizing in private. Sometimes it's about using your story to prevent others from making the same mistakes. But only you can decide if you're ready for that level of vulnerability. Somto sat with the question for several days. He talked to Kenneth, who was surprisingly supportive. He talked to Rebecca, who said, "This is brave, big brother. Do it." Finally, on a Sunday evening, he replied to Gloria, "I'll do it. Not because I think it will make up for what I did. Nothing can. But because you're right. If my story can help one person choose therapy over violence, choose healing over hurt, it's worth the discomfort. Thank you for seeing something redeemable in me, even after everything." Her response came quickly. "Thank you for being willing. We'll keep the details private. This isn't about shaming you. It's about showing what transformation looks like. See you in September." The weeks leading up to September 15th were some of the most anxious of Somto's life. He worked with Dr. Amara on what he would say, how he would frame his story, how to be honest without being self-indulgent in his guilt. "Remember," Dr. Amara coached him, "this isn't about performing remorse. It's about showing young men that they have a choice. That awareness plus action equals change." The venue was a beautiful event space in Ikoyi, filled with young professionals, students, therapists, and activists. Somto arrived early, his palms sweating through his shirt. The panel setup was simple. 5 chairs arranged in a semicircle, microphones, bottles of water. And then he saw her. Gloria was standing near the stage, talking to one of the organizers. She wore a yellow Ankara dress and her natural hair was styled in elegant braids. She looked every bit the successful entrepreneur and mental health advocate she'd become. When she spotted him, she smiled, not the bright smile from her pictures, but a smaller, more tentative one. She excused herself from the conversation and walked over. "Somto. You came. I said I would." They stood there awkwardly for a moment, the weight of their history hanging between them. Then Gloria did something unexpected. She extended her hand. "Thank you," she said as he shook it. "This takes courage. So does inviting me here. Well, I've learned that healing requires courage. You taught me that, actually. Just not in the way you intended." The other panelists arrived, a male therapist who specialized in anger management, a woman who ran a domestic violence shelter, and a young man who'd survived an abusive relationship with his girlfriend. Each of them had a piece of the story to tell. When the panel began, the moderator introduced the topic. How do we break cycles of harm in relationships? How do we help people, especially men, recognize their trauma responses before they traumatize others? The therapist spoke about toxic masculinity and how men are socialized to express only anger, never vulnerability. The domestic violence advocate talked about the patterns she'd seen, how hurt people really do hurt people. The young man shared his story of being in a relationship where his girlfriend's untreated mental health issues manifested as emotional and physical abuse. Then it was Somto's turn. His mouth went dry. The audience, at least 200 people, waited expectantly. He could feel Gloria's eyes on him from across the panel. "My name is Somto," he began, his voice shaky. "And 6 years ago, I destroyed the best relationship I ever had because I didn't know how to handle my own pain." He told them about growing up feeling inadequate, about his father's conditional love, about meeting Gloria and being terrified of her unconditional acceptance because he didn't believe he deserved it. "So I sabotaged it," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I picked fights. I said cruel things. I made her feel small because I felt small. And when she finally had the courage to leave. He paused, swallowing hard. I didn't understand until much later that I hadn't just lost a relationship. I'd nearly destroyed a person. The room was completely silent. I spent 5 years drowning in guilt. I thought that was enough, that punishing myself was the same as changing. But it wasn't. Guilt without action is just self-indulgence. He talked about the moment he saw Gloria's story online. About writing the apology. About her response. I forgave you years ago. I hope you forgive yourself too. That's when I realized forgiveness isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. I had to do the actual work. Therapy. Confronting my father about our relationship. Learning to sit with discomfort instead of lashing out. Learning that my wounds are an explanation, not an excuse. He looked directly at the young men in the audience. If you're sitting here and you recognize yourself in my story, if you know you're taking your pain out on the people you love, please hear me, you can change. But you have to choose to. No one can do this work for you. When he finished, the applause was loud but felt almost inappropriate given the heaviness of what he'd shared. But as he looked out at the audience, he saw people wiping their eyes. He saw young men nodding. He saw recognition. During the Q&A, a young man raised his hand. How did you find the courage to face what you'd done? I think I've been hurting my girlfriend, but I'm scared to admit it. Somto leaned into the microphone. The fear of facing it is nothing compared to the weight of carrying it. And I promise you, your girlfriend already knows. The question is whether you'll acknowledge it before it's too late. Another question came from a woman. Gloria, how were you able to sit on this stage with someone who hurt you so deeply? Gloria took the microphone, and Somto held his breath. Because healing isn't about holding on to hurt, she said. I'm not here to punish Somto or to perform forgiveness for an audience. I'm here because his transformation is proof that people can change. And that's a message our community desperately needs. We're too quick to write people off as irredeemable or to tell hurt people they have to tolerate abuse. Both extremes are harmful. The truth is in the middle. People can change if they're willing to do the work, and we can forgive without allowing them back into our lives. She glanced at Somto. Somto and I will never be friends. We'll never be in each other's lives beyond professional intersections like this. But I can acknowledge his growth without minimizing my pain. Both things can be true. The audience erupted in applause again. After the panel, people lined up to talk to them. Young men wanting therapy recommendations. Women sharing their own stories. Somto exchanged numbers with several guys who wanted to start a men's healing circle. As the crowd thinned, Gloria approached him one final time. You did well today, she said. Thank you for giving me the chance. I didn't give you anything you didn't earn, Somto. You did the work. That's all you. She paused. I mean what I said up there. We're not going to be friends. But I'm genuinely glad you're healing. I'm glad you're thriving. Watching you build mind space, helping people the way you do, it's incredible, Gloria. You turned your pain into purpose. So are you, apparently. Those guys you were talking to? That men's healing circle idea? That matters. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who had once been everything to each other and were now just two people who had survived each other. Take care of yourself, Somto. You too, Gloria. She walked away, back to her team, back to her life, and Somto watched her go without the crushing guilt that had defined him for so long. Instead, he felt something like peace. He felt complete. That night, Somto sat on his balcony in Yoba, watching the Lagos skyline twinkle with lights. September was transitioning into October, and soon it would be December again, the month that had haunted him for 6 years. But this December would be different. This December, he would celebrate with his family not as a ghost going through motions, but as a man who had faced his demons and survived. This December, he would continue the men's healing circle he was starting with the guys from the panel. This December, he would be present. He pulled out his phone and opened his notes app, writing. December used to mean guilt. Now it means growth. She forgave me years ago, and I've finally forgiven myself. That's not where the story ends, it's where it begins. Every day, I choose to be better than I was. Every day, I choose healing. Every day, I choose life. Thank you, Gloria, for showing me that survival is possible. Thank you for turning tragedy into triumph. Thank you for believing that people, even people who hurt you, can transform. And thank you, younger Somto, for being brave enough to face what you'd become and choosing to become something different. This is the December I finally healed. And healing, I've learned, isn't an ending. It's a beginning that continues every single day. Somewhere across Lagos, in her own apartment, Gloria was probably celebrating the successful launch event. She was probably surrounded by her team, making plans for Mindspace Africa's Nigerian expansion. She was probably happy. And for the first time, thinking about her happiness didn't fill Somto with longing or guilt, it filled him with genuine gladness. She had healed. He was healing. Their story together was over, but their individual stories were just beginning. That was enough. That was everything. As December approached, Somto found himself actually looking forward to it. The month that had once represented his greatest shame now represented his greatest transformation. He decorated his apartment for the first time in years. He made plans with friends. He bought thoughtful Christmas gifts for his family. And when December finally arrived, 6 years after the December that changed everything, Somto woke up on Christmas morning with a heart that felt light. He was not perfect. He still went to therapy. He still had hard days. But he was no longer defined by his worst moment. He was defined by every moment after it, every moment he chose to heal, to grow, to be better. That Christmas, as his family gathered in Enugu and his mother served pepper soup and his father actually hugged him properly, Somto offered a silent prayer of gratitude. Thank you for survival. Thank you for second chances. Thank you for the long, difficult journey of becoming whole. Thank you for the December he finally forgave himself. He did it. Somto faced Gloria, shared his story publicly, and finally healed. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe to Folktales by Inaya. Drop a comment. What's your biggest takeaway from Somto's journey? This is the power of real accountability and transformation. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Turn on notifications because we have more powerful stories coming. Thank you for taking this journey with Somto and Gloria. Remember, healing is always possible, but only if you're willing to do the work. See you in the next story.